Hello, Landria here. We're going to talk about I see dead people. I'm going to share some stories with you I think you're going to really love. I'm going to give you stuff that people really want to hear about, and I've got some pretty good stories. I'm going to talk about the things that my dad did that freaked my family out, did things in broad daylight with us, messages, things that he did with me, visited me, did things with other people in the room that I want to share that are pretty freaky, but nothing to fear. So I want to share this with you because you may have experienced some of these things and just blown them off. It's time for us to pay attention because there's communication going on at all times with us. It's nothing to fear. In fact, you could tap into some amazing information if you open yourself up to that other world that exists right here in this room. Are you ready to go there? I got some really cool stories for you. Let's go. Welcome to Landria, Onkka on YouTube, here to help you break through those fears and live an amazing life. Let's break through the fear. What does that mean? Well, if you read my book, it means you are limitless. Limitless. Let's see, there was somebody I remember who walked on water. That was a long time ago, amongst people who were dense that didn't believe it. How did Christ do that? Yet others could not. It's all up here. It's a belief. The veils that we have are between here and a world that exists right here in this room. It's not someplace else. And that's where the spirits, the energy fields that were once bodies, reside. Now I do want to share something with you, and that is just because somebody passes on, maybe while they were here they weren't the nicest person, just because somebody goes to the other side and is exposed to nothing but unconditional love, doesn't mean they've got their act together. That's so important for you to know because, as Eckhart Tolle said, your drunk uncle is still going to act like your drunk uncle when he goes to the other side, except for they do evolve there also. There's learning that continues on. This is why it's so important for us to get this in check while we're here, because we will go into the frequency of that which we align with. Now, you know I've talked about this. Those who pass on, they are still in contact with us, and sometimes they won't be if they went through some trauma and they're still caught up in an energy field working things out. That's what ghosts are when they get caught in places. They have not released what it is they experience. They don't sometimes even know they're dead. Sometimes it's just energy playing out a repetitive story that occurred in that situation, in that space. Maybe in a house there was a murder and it just replays. There are differences. So those are unconscious energy fields. What I want to talk about today is the conscious energy fields of those who do love us and who can guide us, will still be going through their own stuff. Now, I've lost my whole family, if you don't know this. I was a former investment banker, and I decided, it was time for me to make some big changes in my life. I just wasn't resonating with it. And I went through a series of events which included the death of my entire family. I went through a divorce. Nothing traumatic there. It was good for us both. And then my mother died suddenly within a few days of having a stroke before I could even get up and see her. My dog died. My dad died. My cousin died, and my brother died, all of them pretty suddenly. My dad went suddenly. He had what's supposedly a heart attack, but he was actually had bleeding in his stomach because he was taking painkillers for his hip. The guy doesn't drink, he doesn't do anything, but he couldn't stand the pain. He was taking way too many painkillers. I think he was addicted to them. Nobody was stopping this. His stomach was bleeding. Well, when you lose blood, you go into cardiac arrest. So he went suddenly and surprisingly. That was very unexpected. Now, when he died, he left quite a mess. My dad was somewhat of a hoarder, okay, that was being nice. And he was in a coma state, and my brother and I had to, let him go. And I knew when I was in that room with him that he was totally aware of us, even though he was pretty much, body was, just being held together with machines. And so I told my brother, who had said a few things, I said, Dad can hear you. And he was like, what? I said, yeah, he's not he's not in his body, but he's still tied to it. And I said, he's in the room with us right now. I'm pretty sure of it. And I always treated my dad that way. My dad was aware that I knew that even if I didn't experience seeing him, that I was aware of his presence. And you don't have to see somebody or experience anything to know that they can hear everything you say, actually way more than when they were alive standing in the room with you. So when we let my dad go, we went back to the house and we were like, oh my gosh, let's have a bottle of wine and just sit around. Well, when I walked in the house, I pretty much started to hyperventilate because it was so just cray-cray. I actually am writing a book about it that's pretty amazing, what I share in there. So we realized we had to get to work right away. So we poured the wine all right, but then we put on the work clothes and started cleaning up everything because it was just overwhelming. Well, while we were in the basement that was just, stacked with stuff. By the way, he collected new stuff. He would buy like 10 VCRs and not open them. 12 packs of brand new slippers and never open them. I mean, you can imagine what it looked like. It was insane. And so we're clearing all this stuff out, and my nephew and his wife and my brother was not capable, so he was upstairs in the kitchen. And so the three of us were down in the basement. It actually goes out to the lake, so it's not a basement. And it had sconces on the walls, and one of them had been burnt out for years. All of a sudden, we started to talk about, like, what was he thinking, and what is this, and oh my gosh, and we would start pulling things out and going, look at this, and look at this, and it was just, we were just so overwhelmed by this. And all of a sudden, one of the burnt out sconce started flashing, and we all stopped. I have to say, it was a little weird. I said, whoa, I thought that was burnt out. And Derek was like, yeah. And I said, it's probably Mom. I don't know why I said my mom, because we were going through some of her stuff. So it's probably my mom trying to communicate with us. And Derek says, he's an engineer. I said, oh, you don't believe in that stuff? I said, okay, I don't blame you. But let's test it. I said, let's ask some questions. And it stopped. I said, Mom, if that's you, flash twice. It was burnt out. See, it's burnt out. It's nothing. I said, no. Let's ask if it's Dad. I said, Dad, if it's you, flash once. Derek and Jessica. And they said, oh my gosh, he's probably pissed off because we're throwing his stuff out. And I said, well, let's ask him. Dad, if you're okay with us throwing this stuff out, flash once. Boom. My father was communicating with us, talking to him and answering questions. He was still in that house because he had just died, and we were going through this traumatic experience of taking on this burden. It was a burden of having to clear out what he had left. He still had that attachment. Of course, hoarders are attached to the physical world anyways. Be careful of that. Be able to let go of stuff. It's nice to have really nice stuff, but can you let it go? If you have an attachment, it will hold you here. There's no such thing as time, but there will be a time period that you will be held to that. So I realized my dad was just more concerned about us and what he had left. And so that night, I told him, I said, you picked the right person to take care of this. I'm going to be okay. Doug and I can handle this. I said, Derek is here. I said, I'm not mad at you. I meditated on this. By the way, I didn't sleep for several days. So my brother, the next day, when I talked to him, we talked about what had happened, because Derek and Jessica went running up the stairs and fixed a cocktail because they were freaked out because this was going on. And I said, well, Dad's still hanging around here. I think he's looking after us. And he needs to know that we're not angry and we're okay. And I said, Doug, if you talk to him, he'll know. Because my brother had been living there with my dad for a little while. And he says, yeah, really? And he was pretty open to that. And I said, yeah, if you talk to him, he will probably respond in some way. So my brother went outside when I had to go out and run some errands and do things. My brother, who was a smoker, went outside and he was sitting out there and he started talking to my dad. Well, he started talking to my dad right around the time, because my brother was there when the ambulance came, right around the time that the ambulance came and picked up my dad, and that was actually when his heart stopped. And it was 3 o'clock. And so he said, well, Dad, it was right about now that you left us. And he had a conversation with my dad out loud. When I came back from my errands, my brother said, I want you to come in the house. I said, okay. And the grandfather clock that ran beautifully was chiming. I said, okay, what is it I'm supposed to be looking at? And I got back at like 5 o'clock. And he said, look at the time. It was 3 o'clock. I said, what does that mean? He said, that's when Dad died. He never really came back after that. They restarted his heart, but he never was conscious again. He says, 3 o'clock was exactly when Dad died. And I went outside just before 3 o'clock and talked to him. And the grandfather clock started chiming, and it didn't stop. And he listened to it for 2 hours till I got home just to prove to me. I said, okay, let's stop it. I said, he let you know. He let you know. Now, I have to tell you, after I got that information, I was aware that my dad had actually died at 3 p.m. I was in the office days later, and I heard an alarm go off that I couldn't find, and I finally went through stacks of papers and found this alarm, and I thought, okay, wait a second, nobody set alarm. It's been days, so it isn't like, it could have gone off. This is one of those 24-hour alarms. And I thought, if that thing, if it's 3 o'clock, I'm going to freak. And I looked on my phone, and it was 4 o'clock. So I went and got the alarm clock. And the alarm clock said 3 o'clock because we had changed the time. We had a time change. The alarm clock said 3 o'clock. And I had to shut it off. This continued to happen with 3 o'clock. Now, I'll share a couple of other things. My dad, he would hide stuff around the house. Money, piles of money. It was freaky. And so you couldn't throw anything away. You had to go through everything. Well, I knew he had a coin collection. And so I went into the workshop. He was very detailed on his will that there was a collection in the workshop, and I couldn't find it. I said to Doug, it's not in there. I don't know why he put that on. It's not in there. He says, well, you've looked everywhere, and there's no possible way that you've missed anything. No. Well, that night, I had a dream. And in the dream, this sort of flipped me out a little. It's one of those dreams that's real, It's not like, oh, it's happening. It's like you're standing in the room with this person. I was down in front of the workshop, and my dad floated down. That was sort of weird. Floated down, stood there, and took a glass jar of coins and poured it out on the floor. And I thought, at first I was like, and I went, oh, wait, this is my dad. And I said, Dad, can I hug you? And he said yes, because I didn't know if I could touch him. So I hugged him. And I thought, oh my God, I was so aware at that moment. It wasn't a dream where you're like, oh my gosh, I should have done this or that. I was so aware. I went, oh my gosh, he's here. I'm going to ask him questions. How cool, right? I said, Dad, is there something I need to know that you want to tell me? Is there something you want to share with me? And he said, yes. As soon as you're done with your business here, I want you to clear out. Okay. He wanted me to get out of there as soon as possible, and I don't know why. And I did leave a lot earlier than I thought I was going to. I didn't spend as much time there. I spent weeks, but And so I paid attention. I told my brother the next day, I said, he came to me last night and he poured money on the floor in front of the workshop. He's telling me there's money in there. And Doug said, you know you went through everything. I said, I got to go back there. I climbed up on this ledge because it was in a basement. And behind the heater in this little area, back, way back, I had to crawl up in all the dirt, were jars and jars of money he had collected, his coin collection. My dad, when I was in the bank, I applied, I had to handle all the banking. I decided that I wanted to take some of the money and start a business. So I met with the banker and he said, I hate to tell you this, but there's no way. You don't have a business plan. And he said, this takes weeks to approve, even if you were going to be okay. He said, but I think you need to wait, and come up with a plan and, a budget and all this stuff, and then maybe we'll look at this. And he says, but I'll run it through, just for you, I'll run it through anyways. I said, okay, that's fine. So I sat at the table, and so he called the offices, he submitted it on the computer, and somebody called and said, now, he said, this takes a week to approve, but he says, I'm going to tell you right now, she's not going to get approved. He says, okay, we knew that, but we just wanted to make sure. And so while the guy on the phone was sitting there, he said, he was on a speakerphone, he said, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And we said, what? And he said, I don't know what happened, but my computer almost blew up. He said this blue light lit up the whole room. He said it was weird. I thought the computer blew. And he said, and then on the screen was your information. It was an approval for the loan. He said, that's impossible. And we said, well, you're looking at it. He said, it's impossible. It takes them days to even look at the information. And he said, I don't know what that was. He says, I don't know what that was, but I'm freaked out right now. I knew what it was. I'll tell you one more story because I have a lot more. He did unbelievable stuff. So I had to go to the bank initially to go and get everything released. I went in there, and before I went there, my dad used to call me Missy. That was his name for me. Before I went into the bank, I said, Dad, I want you to give me a direct sign. Now this is pretty bold, right? I didn't ask for a penny or some little, butterfly. I said, I want to hear my nickname. Missy, I want to hear my nickname. Somewhere, I want to hear it or see it and let me know you're with me. I was pretty demanding. So I went into the bank, and there was this young black man. He was an assistant manager, really nice guy, very, very professional. Beautiful suit. I go into his office, and so we're there 2 hours trying to sort out all this stuff. And while we're sitting there, he says, he was just so sweet to me, just so helpful. And before I was ready to leave, he leaned across the desk, smacked his hand on it and said, you have your hands full here, Missy. A young professional black man in the bank doesn't talk like that. And I just was blown away. Missy, he called me. There's this older woman he's talking to. Missy. And my dad was there. I've got more stories like this. Some pretty mind-blowing ones. My mom came to me also and showed me in a dream a box while I was in the house, a box of jewelry. I'd gone through her whole thing. And I told my aunt, I said, Mom came to me last night and showed me jewelry in a shoebox. And she says, well, it's got to be there somewhere. And so I thought, it's in a shoebox. I went through all the shoes, but I went through her closet again, and way in the back, one of the shoe boxes was full of beautiful costume jewelry, but it was magnificent. They're always talking to us. Pay attention to those dreams. I've got many, many more stories like this. I think it's time to start sharing them. Yeah, this is real stuff. And they will guide you and protect you. I have more stories about protection. So if you've got some stories, I would love to hear them. And I would love to interview you. If you have some really cool stories, come on and get on my podcast. I want to start sharing what you have experienced, because most people have and they just don't talk about it. We're talking about it now. These are free videos. If you guys know Breakthrough Fear, I talk about there are just veils between us and that other side, and you can break through them. You don't have to have a near-death experience to go to that other realm. And they're there, but if we pull down the veils and we're not listening, we can't hear them. They're not heard. And they will give you all kinds of amazing signs. So I hope you'll go buy the book. This is on Amazon. It's called Breakthrough Fear, and the link is down in the description. These are free, and I have a free master class for you. 4 proven steps to manifest anything. It's a brand new class. If you went to the other one, this is a brand new updated one. Also, these are free videos to start your own online business. The many ways that you can earn money online, give you ideas. You can change your life just like I did. I had the spontaneous healing. My foot, that was the message. You were going in the wrong direction. And when I changed directions, yeah, I got healed. I hope you'll subscribe, and I look forward to sharing more mysterious, mystical stories with you. You ready for that? Because you're whole and perfect, strong and powerful, loving, harmonious, and happy. That's from the Master Key System. Namaste.